What you see here is a segment of a small hydrated moss sample that I put in a petri dish. I was using my Laowa 190mm ultra macro lens, mostly at its maximum magnification of 2x, along with the NiSi 49mm close-up lens on the Canon R7 to try to capture some interesting macroscopic and even some microscopic organisms. This is most likely the juvenile stage or nymph of a thrip species. A lot of thrip species are considered pests, but predatory thrip nymphs are beneficial. These tiny, vibrantly solid red or dark red bugs act as natural pest control agents by eating other mites, thrip larvae, and scale insects. Thrips are very small. For example, the red-banded thrips peak at just 1.2 mm, and their nymphs are incredibly tiny, starting at a fraction of that. When a nymph first hatches from its egg, it is less than 0.5 mm long. It is almost impossible to spot without a magnifying glass. Unlike pest thrips that suck plant sap, many native Australian moss-dwelling thrips are completely harmless to higher plants. They feed exclusively on fungal spores, decaying organic matter, or the primitive tissues of the moss itself. The nymphs or larvae of many thrips are known to actively produce anal droplets as a primary defense mechanism. When threatened or attacked by predators, such as a predatory mite, the wingless nymphs curl and raise their abdomens. They swing the tip toward the attacker. They produce a conspicuous droplet of fluid from their anus at the tip of the abdomen. This anal exudate functions as a direct contact irritant or repellent against enemies like ants. These defensive droplets often contain specific chemical compounds such as acetate esters like decyl acetate or dodecyl acetate. Besides repelling the predator, these chemicals evaporate to act as alarm pheromones, warning nearby thrips to flee or take cover. It is easy to confuse these defensive secretions with the dark specks often seen around thrips populations. The difference is that defensive droplets are exuded rapidly from the hindgut, specifically during a disturbance or predator encounter, to serve as a weapon or alarm, whereas the frass or excrement are regular liquid fecal deposits that are left behind on leaves as they feed. If the moss is growing on the bark of a fruit tree, for example, or ornamental plant, pest thrips, like the red-banded thrips, frequently drop down into the moss, leaf litter or bark crevices to seek moisture and shelter from the cold weather. The nymphs of many litter and moss-dwelling thrips are naturally bright pink, orange or blood red. The primary function of this intense coloration is to warn predators. Many springtails can walk directly on top of the water film because they have super hydrophobic cuticle. This neonurid has a skin texture coated in microscopic waxy granules and tiny pockets that fiercely repel water. Because it is so tiny and lightweight, its water-repellent feet don't break through the water's surface. Instead, it dimples the surface tension, allowing it to glide across the water's surface film like an aquatic snowshoe. Almost all of the springtails that I found in this sample were searching for food. Because I flooded the moss environment, a lot of organic particles, debris, and microscopic food sources have been dislodged and were floating on or just beneath the surface film. Members of the family Neonuridae are specialized feeders. They don't have chewing jaws like many other insects. Instead, they have specialized modified mouth parts used for rasping and sucking. It was navigating through that floating debris to feed on microbial biofilms, the thin layer of bacteria growing on the organic matter, on fungal hyphae and slime molds, and detritus, the tiny decaying bits of plant matter. If you watch how it moves, it walks with a slow, deliberate, almost clumsy crawl. This is because Neonuridae have completely lost their furcula, the jumping organ, through evolution. Unlike other springtails that would instantly boing away if disturbed, these guys rely entirely on their water-repellent armor and slow crawling to get around, making them excellent study subjects for macrovideography. First, I thought that this springtail belonged to the family Neonuridae as well, based on its plump, segmented appearance. However, because it has a fully functioning, high-powered furcula, this is actually a member of the Hypogastruridae family, or a closely related group of Poiduromorpha. Hypogastrurid springtails look incredibly similar to neonurids at a glance. They are also plump, fleshy, deeply segmented, and often sport beautiful pink, purple, or reddish hues. The big difference is, unlike neonurids, hypogastrurids kept their launch pads. Their furcula is short and tucked tightly under their abdomen, making it almost invisible from above until they release it. What makes this incredible is where it jumped from. When a springtail is on a dry surface, its furcula slaps the ground to launch it. But on the surface film of water, it's a completely different physics problem. Because its body and tail are super hydrophobic, the furcula doesn't break through the water film when it snaps down. Instead, it pushes against the water surface tension like a trampoline, using the elastic properties of the water film to propel itself into the air. In this clip, I thought that this large specimen was crawling on top of a dead one. The hollow-looking structure underneath the active springtail isn't a dead body though. It's almost certainly an exuvia, the shed exoskeleton of another springtail, or even its own previous skin. Springtails do not stop molting once they reach adulthood. They continue to shed their skin throughout their entire lives. The larger springtail was potentially feeding while climbing all over it. An insect's shed exoskeleton is made of chitin and covered in proteins. To a tiny creature in a competitive moss ecosystem, that is a free nutrient-dense snack. Springtails frequently eat their own shed skins, or the skins of their neighbors, to reclaim those valuable resources. This sort of cannibalism dermatophagy is pretty prevalent among springtails. Dead organic matter and shed skins quickly collect bacteria and fungal spores too, and this springtail might have been simply scraping the tasty biofilms of the surface of the shell. Members of the family of Entomobridae are heavily covered in specialized hairs called setae, and depending on the species, microscopic scales similar to a butterfly's wings. This extreme fuzziness serves several vital survival purposes. This dense forest of hairs acts like a microscopic barrier. It also functions as a high-tech sensory navigation system. Because they live in dark, tight microspaces under moss and leaf litter, their eyesight is incredibly poor. Those long, distinct hairs protruding from its back and sides are highly sensitive tactile organs. They act like cat whiskers, allowing the springtail to feel changes in air currents, vibrations, and nearby obstacles. Some of these specialized hairs can also make them a very unappealing, prickly mouthful for predatory mites or small beetles. At first, I thought that this rather large macroorganism was some sort of predatory larva, but it was actually a rove beetle. Rove beetles vary significantly in size, but most species are quite small. Most rove beetles measure between 2 to 8 mm. I could barely see this one with the naked eye, so I assume this is on the lower end. Rove beetles are highly active, fast-moving predators in the leaf litter and moss microworld. While springtails eat fungi and decaying plants, rove beetles eat springtails. They are voracious hunters, using their highly flexible abdomens and speed to navigate tight moss crevices to ambush microarthropods. In these clips I captured, you can see it was actively probing the moss with its antennae and head. It was definitely aggressively hunting, investigating the water droplets and the surface of the moss leaves to pick up on the chemical scents or vibrations of nearby prey. I also spotted a number of nematodes. This is probably the largest one in this sample. Nematodes are known for their signature locomotive pattern. If you look at how it thrashes around, it moves in a distinct, continuous S-shaped sinusoidal wave. Unlike earthworms or leeches, nematodes cannot stretch, compress, or crawl smoothly. This frantic wiggling is due to a fascinating biological limitation. Nematodes only have muscles running lengthwise down their bodies. They completely lack circular muscles. Their bodies are packed with high-pressure fluid called hydrostatic pressure. Because they can only contract their muscles side to side against this high-pressure tube, they are locked into this whip-like thrashing movement. Nematodes are among the most abundant multicellular animals on the planet, and damp moss is absolute paradise for them. Most moss-dwelling nematodes are completely harmless grazing animals that swim through the microscopic water films to feast on bacteria, fungal spores, and other organic debris. This vibrant orange creature that you can see in the center is a segmented worm, specifically a semi-aquatic or terrestrial microannelid. This was most likely an Allosoma worm due to the row of orange dots running down its body, which is its distinct feature. These are actually specialized glandular cells embedded in the worm's skin. Depending on the specific species of Allosoma, these internal droplets can range from bright yellow to vibrant orange or red. You can see its distinctly segmented body, which is a classic trait of annelids, segmented worms, just like earthworms. The wider, slightly rounded section on the right side of the image is its prostomium, the head, which it uses like a vacuum to suck up microscopic organic matter. They are entirely harmless and act as tiny vacuum cleaners. They crawl around slowly, feeding on bacteria, unicellular algae, and micro debris, making them a great sign of a healthy mini ecosystem. Rotifers are microscopic, mostly aquatic multicellular animals, easily recognized by a wheel-like crown of spinning cilia used for swimming and sweeping food into their mouths. Here you can see a classic deltoid rotifer that was anchoring itself and filter feeding. Deltoid rotifers are famous for their dual modes of movement. When they want to travel, they move like an inchworm, using their mouth and their toe to scoot along. But when it's time to eat, they use an adhesive gland in their foot, that little pointed tail structure you can see anchored to the left, to lock themselves down. Once anchored, they can extend and telescope their translucent bodies out into the water, which is exactly that posture it's holding in this clip. On their heads, they have a specialized crown-like structure covered in tiny beating hairs, cilia, called the corona. When these cilia spin in rapid succession, they look exactly like rotating wheels. This movement creates a powerful miniature vortex in the water, sucking in bacteria, algae, and small organic particles straight into its mouth. This last species that I recorded is a predatory mite, specifically from the family Anistidae, commonly known as a whirligig mite or long-legged velvet mite. The legs of whirligig mites radiate outwards in all directions like spokes on a bicycle wheel. This gives them incredible agility and allows them to move sideways, backwards, and change directions instantly. In these clips that I captured, you can see it was rapidly tapping its exceptionally long front legs. Those front legs act like high-speed radar sensors to detect the vibrations of fast-moving prey, like the springtails we found earlier. I also spotted two glowing, iridescent blue-green patches on its back that were breathtaking. What you're seeing is a phenomenon called structural coloration. Instead of relying on chemical pigments like regular color, the mite's outer skin, the cuticle, in those specific spots has highly organized microscopic layers or ridges. When our intense macro light hits these microstructures, the light waves bounce off different layers and interfere with each other, reflecting back a vivid metallic shimmer. Biologists are still studying why some soil mites have these iridescent patches, but there are two leading theories. One is about camouflage and light disruption. In the dappled light of moss and leaf litter, bright, shifting reflections can break up the mite's outline, making it harder for larger predators like spiders or a rove beetle to target them. The other theory is about water shedding. Sometimes the exact microscopic structure needed to make an insect's skin ultra waterproof or super hydrophobic naturally behaves like a prism, causing an accidental iridescent glow under bright light. Thank you so much for watching this little documentary of our micro-safari food chain, from the filter-feeding rotifers and grazing springtails right up to the apex predators of the moss rod like the rove beetle and this whirligig mite. Thanks again, don't forget to subscribe for more, and catch you all in the next one.